Hello and welcome to the Get French Football News preview show this evening. I'm your host, Eric Devin. We have a combination show lined up for you this evening, and with Philip Bargiel joining myself and Nathan Staples to talk Les Bleus before Adam White and Peter Bowler come in to preview a bumper weekend of Ligue action in 20 minutes' time. France thumped Bulgaria 4-1 on Friday, Kevin Gamero's brace being the big story, as the Atletico Madrid striker found the back of the net for his country for the first time in over 5 years. Antoine Griezmann and Dimitri Payet were also on the score sheet in a match that saw the hosts forced to battle back after conceding an early penalty. Mariners cropped up again on Monday evening, despite a crucial result away in Holland. Paul Pogba's goal was all that separated the two sides in a 1-0 win, but Hugo Lloris was forced to make some crucial saves. The result does see France in clear control of the group ahead of November's match against Sweden. The under-21 team was not so lucky, however, as despite a 3-0 win away to Northern Ireland, the team finished a point off the pace in their group, marking yet another failed European Championship qualification campaign. But let's start with the senior side. Nathan, you and I had a bit of a debate yesterday on Twitter, friendly between ourselves, but maybe not so for some of our followers. I am happy to report that my house has not yet been burned down. But let's talk about Paul Pogba. How good was he against the Netherlands, and why didn't we see that player in the prior 3 matches for France?
I thought he was excellent against the Netherlands. This is the kind of performance that you really want to see from a player like Pogba, where he gets involved and he dictates the way that France play. And that was through, I think he had 99 touches overall, which was more than anyone else on the field, which shows you how active he wanted to be in this game. And when he's like that, he can be a real pendulum swinger and give your team real momentum. And I thought he did excellently at switching the play to bring the fullbacks forward, Kazar and Dribble Sidibe, although the service wasn't excellent at all times. I thought he linked defence from midfield to attack very well. He's especially that passing play he had with Martial in the second half that almost made that second goal. The first goal it's a decent strike, but Stecklenburg should absolutely be saving something like that. It's more something on the goalkeeper's part than his, and I think the celebration has been seen as a bit of a smug sort of moment for Pogba, but it's almost like it looked like he was a bit like, well, the keeper should really do better with that. It was a strange one. But I thought he was excellent. I thought he really, when he plays like this, it can make any team that bit better. On another day, France were more dangerous in the final third. If someone, especially like Antoine Griezmann, who didn't have the best of games, and Kevin Gamero was very isolated, if he would have been able to have better players in front of him to create a little bit more from the work he did, it might have been accentuated a little bit more because especially in that second half, the attacking players were a bit anonymous. I thought, especially, I don't know if anyone else saw this, but when they brought on the sub of Martial for Payet, Sissoko seemed to wander he was defensive midfield, he was up front, he was on the left wing for a bit. I don't know what he was doing for a moment, but it completely lost the shape. That's why it was such a weirdly uneven second half. But why this hasn't turned up in the past 3 matches, it's always difficult to tell. Whether you put that on Pogba or whether you put that on management, I don't know. I would probably put it more on the Frenchman. He does need to get more involved. That's what the thing is. He needs to make sure he's getting involved in these games, because when he does, he affects them. He always looks positive. He always looks forward. So if you can get him more involved, and maybe again, that's maybe something then you lean on Deschamps for, maybe try and get him more involved with maybe someone else beside him that allows him more freedom, or players in front of him that allow him more creative options to pass to, then that's maybe a way forward. But it's a bit of both. I don't think you can take the push without the shove.
It's interesting what you said, Nathan, about Martial, because I thought when the substitute actually happened, when Payet was replaced by Martial, I actually thought Martial and Sissoko switched side, because we saw Sissoko on the left wing for quite a long amount of time. I think it was from 5 to 10 minutes. So I thought they switched side because the Dutch right back was a very fast guy, and that Sissoko is such a versatile player. Forward, he can do the defensive work. He can work in the midfield. But then he reverted back to the right wing, and then went to we saw him also in a, as you said, in a defensive midfield position. But it's I think going back on the only chance the Dutch did have. I thought it was a real shame because the chance actually came from a bad back pass from Anthony Martial towards Levin Kurzawa, which led to a cross, which led to a mini goalmouth scramble, which led to a shot that was wonderfully saved by Hugo Lloris. And I think it's a shame about Martial because I thought he actually had a good few minutes coming on as a sub, better than we're used to seeing from him. So I thought it was a shame that France's only chance conceded to the Netherlands came from a Martial error. So it was a shame.
Well, Philip, given that you, like myself, are paying more attention to Pogba playing for his country than for his club, what are your thoughts? Is he a luxury or is he a necessity for France?
I'd still say he's a luxury. Especially after the game we saw, he was not particularly seen against Bulgaria, where it was more of the GG show. So Griezmann and Gamero. Well, I thought he got quite a bit of stick for not being the ever-present player that we know he can be. I thought it was a bit harsh, but I thought against Holland it was much better in terms of vision. His distribution. Now, I didn't think he had a fantastic game. I thought he didn't influence the attack that much before his goal. And I'll repeat what Nathan said: it's a good strike, but it's a strike that should have been saved, especially from a goalkeeper of Stekelenburg's experience. But when you saw him next to Matuidi. You just saw Matuidi look like a headless chicken, a bit like when you're a young boy, you're starting to play football, and you see a guy who's wearing a different shirt from you. Say, okay, I have to pass the ball because then I'm going to lose it. And Matuidi usually played it sideways or played it backwards or to Pogba. And then you saw Pogba. He actually put his head up and said, okay, who's available? And you saw such a difference in terms of using the ball between the two of them. We just saw. I actually saw Pogba's not the problem. It's the player he plays with that is the problem. So maybe it gives a chance to maybe Conte is a bit too defensive. But I'm thinking more of a Rabiot Tolisso type, which would be interesting. But Deschamps has to try things with this squad. I mean, we just won possibly the toughest game of the group. Now I'm not sure who will finish second between. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself there. I'm not sure who will finish in front of who between Holland and Sweden. But I'm thinking the game in Amsterdam is going to be on paper is a lot tougher than the game in Stockholm. So I think Deschamps has a luxury with the friendlies and with the rest of the qualifiers against. Shall we say Belarus, the game against Bulgaria, to actually try stuff with that midfield, because this is where he needs to be trying stuff a lot, and as soon as possible.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Lassana Diarra can recover from his mysterious back injuries that have
also
kept him away from Marseille. Nathan, coming on to you, Kevin Gamero had a fine match against an decidedly outclassed Bulgaria, but he really struggled to some extent against a more resolute Dutch side. Virgil van Dijk had a really nice match, in particular there, at least from my perspective. Should he continue to get a chance against Sweden, or should we look to see the likes of Giroud or somebody else come back in a month's time?
I like Gamero. I've talked about how I've liked him before, and I thought he was, as you mentioned, really good against Bulgaria, but that was a lower standard of opponent that really struggled with the movement of him and Griezmann. But I think he struggles against the Dutch, is more reliant on the players around him to get that service as that front man. I think it's probably nice to say that Griezmann didn't have the best of games. He lost possession a lot. He was for his standards very inconsistent, I thought, and I was really disappointed with the way he played, and that pulled Gamero out of it as he had less of a link. Payet wasn't as influential as he can be. Sissoko's never really going to link up attacks so well, so he was a little bit isolated against two centre backs that are relatively in form in Van Dijk and
Bruma.
Yeah. So Bruma, who's doing reasonably well at Wolfsburg now as well. That both of them really could. It was too easy for them at times. Maybe again, Gamero should be focused on his movement a little bit, but more and darting around a little bit more. But I don't think that either Giroud or Andre Pierre-Gignac offer you anything else. The only reason I would possibly drop him is if between now and the next international break, Lacazette's fit and firing again. That's the only reason I would think about dropping him, in all honesty, because neither of the other two strikers that were there on international duty, I don't think are worthy of displacing him, unless you want to put Griezmann up front on top and then maybe play a 4-3-3. But that whether he will do that is up in the air as well. But I would stick with him, yeah.
So Philip, I want to talk to you about somebody who you follow for club and country. That's Blaise Matuidi. He's been a little bit more peripheral for. He was a bit more peripheral for both at the start of the season, but he's really been one of France and PSG's more consistent players in the last 6 weeks. He's even looked comfortable as on Monday in a midfield 2 or wide on the left as part of an attack at a 4-3-3 that he played for PSG. What do you think's behind his improved form in the last 6 weeks or so?
I'm still of the opinion that his best position is on the left-hand side of the 4-3-3 with the three midfielders playing next to each other. I don't think he was particularly good against Holland, especially when you compared him to Pogba. The problem is we have got such into a habit of praising him for being the guy with 3 lungs, or even 4 sometimes, running around all over the place, playing so well. And we've seen last season and a couple of games where he's been dropped at the beginning of the season, where it's still very, very good. I mean, not criticizing or anything, but it's just some of the critics may say that maybe he's past his prime, given that he doesn't play at a level that is so intense as it was 2 to 3 years ago. And we saw it against Holland. I mean, against Holland, it was much more below par than Paul Pogba, and probably the worst midfielder. I don't think the formation suits him. I don't think it at the Euros, and I don't think he's comfortable playing in a 4-2-3-1.
So you don't think that he's had a better start to the season than people would have expected? I mean, he was a bit unsettled with these rumors of moving to Juventus.
No, for PSG, I think it's been okay. I mean, he hasn't been playing at first, and I really truly believe that he wanted to leave, but then he said, okay, well, I'm going to stay for PSG at least for this season. Might as well make the most of it. But for France, I just think that trying something new would probably involve putting him on the bench. Yeah.
All right, well, I want to bring you both in, Nathan, Philip, on this last point. That's the under-21, or Les Espoirs, as they're known in France. This team has some of Ligue 1's best players. I'm not saying best young players. I'm saying best players. And like Thomas Lemar, Corentin Tolisso, Adrien Rabiot. Yet they failed against a really unimpressive qualification group to qualify for the European Championships next summer. They dropped points in 2 matches, admittedly, when they finished with 10 men. They also lost the death away to Ukraine. To you both, Nathan first, is this an issue, this not qualifying, in terms of these players' international careers going forward? And secondly, how important is tournament experience in a young player's development?
Tournament experience, for starters, is absolutely vital, I think, because as you see in all levels of football. I mean, look at the players that played for Germany in the 2010 World Cup, and then how many of those players stayed on for their World Cup success in 2014. Well, obviously, and then you think back to 2 years before that, how many of those players started in the Euro 2008 under-21s final for Germany and then carried on with that team, eventually winning that World Cup. So it shows you how important that can be, for one thing. But we've seen some comments from the under-21s manager, recently. I'm just remembering his name because it's just
Mankowski.
yeah. I think he's just about to leave his post, I believe, if I remember rightly. And he was saying that the players were working as possibly as their own selves rather than as a collective, and that's maybe the issue. Really, with this side of Full Stop is they have terrific talent. Whether he used them all the time, obviously, sometimes the likes of Rabiot has dipped his toes in the senior squad. So has Ousmane Dembele, who was part of the squad that's been around this time. But you've mentioned the right things, little niggles and these kind of things, losing it at the death to Ukraine, and Paul Nardi being sent off in one of the games against Macedonia, where another goal might have shifted things. They just were probably a little bit unlucky. The qualifications for these kind of things are so tight in the under-21s realm that you need to make sure you're on your game every week. And inconsistencies in squad selection, possibly because of how good these young players are and worthy of possible full call-ups, has probably interrupted their flow and means that they miss out, which is unfortunate because they're a really talented group. If they make the tournament, that would have been really important, especially to those who are more on the fringes. I'm thinking of players that aren't really of that top level. Like you mentioned, the best players in Ligue. I'm thinking of the other players that could really benefit from that kind of experience in their future. As some of them have already benefited from the under-19s, like Ludovic Blas. They maybe need a strong look at this and thinking whether players should stay in the under-21s until they feel like they can make the move up and not change things around too often, because it seems to have unsettled them. But it's a shame because I think they would have made big waves if they made it.
I found into maybe a bit too much pressure from their clubs to be doing something. I mean, I'm not quite sure if the clubs are quite happy to give usage chance at club level, and that as the boys who are 17 or 18 start to play for their club, they really want to cement a place in Ligue 1. They want to keep playing. They get a professional contract. They're over the moon with it, and maybe that's under 21 squad comes afterwards. Maybe the motivation is not quite there. I'm really trying to think of some some kind of explanation, because watching the squad again, the goalkeepers are fine. So are the defenders. We've got Issa Diop from Toulouse, Kimpembe, who could be actually playing week in week out for Paris Saint-Germain. In midfield, Coziello, Rabiot, Blin, Tolisso. Just tell me another side that has that quality of players at under 21 level. It just baffles me, and maybe. The short version would be maybe it's a jinx against France because it's been more than 10 years we haven't made a under 21 tournament, which is absolutely amazing. I mean, that's an amazing statistic given the quality. So yeah, very, very disappointing.
Yeah, that fine team featured the likes of Olivier Vigneault back in 2004. So it certainly has, or 2005 rather. It certainly has been a while.
Yeah.
We'll let you get some sleep now. Thanks for joining us. Look forward to recapping with you on Monday. And we are now joined by Adam White and Peter Bowler, our regular preview show correspondents, to look at a really exciting weekend in Ligue 1. So let's start with Friday's matches. And Toulouse-Monaco is the early evening kickoff. In fact, have two matches on a Friday. It's a little bit different schedule for Ligue 1 this weekend due to the Champions League matches. So Adam, Monaco are just a point off the top, and a huge trip to Moscow, though, is looming on Tuesday. What should Jardim's strategy be in this match as regards to starting 11?
I think it's an interesting question, because it's something that Jardim has got right. For in their previous 4 Champions League games, they haven't been defeated. They've won 3 of those games. So his selection policy for the games preceding Champions League games has actually been top notch. And we've mentioned in recent pods that even though perhaps there isn't the really deep sort of strength and depth in Monaco's team, they are able to rotate in some areas and still get results. But before they were winning before the previous game, home to Angers, who have proven in recent weeks they're a very, very good side. So I imagine that he'll continue to use his squad as much as he can, as much as it will allow, because they're definitely fighting on two fronts. That's a very tough Champions League group. They've started relatively well, very well, winning at Spurs and getting that last-minute Glick goal at home in the second game. So they're on course there. As you said, they're only a point off the top in Ligue 1, so he needs to manage it carefully, which he's done brilliantly well so far. So he sort of maximised his use of resources. So Fabinho missed out before the previous game. The first group game, João Moutinho missed out the game before that. Bernardo Silva's missed out following games. So he's rotated his squad really well. And we talked about the Lille game in particular. They went to Lille, although Lille are poor, as we discussed before, and won 4-1, and they were very sort of imperious in that performance. So I imagine that players will be rested. Sidibe and Jameson didn't even make the squad before the previous game, so he'll continue to rotate, but do so wisely. And some of his premier players, perhaps Glick, who's played every game so far this season, and perhaps Fabinho might still make the team. So he'll mix it with some of the younger players might come in. You might see him and Mbappé Lotan, which would be nice. Carrillo got a couple of goals in the previous game, maybe, so he could be a useful player perhaps in this game. So he'll continue to rotate. And another thing that he's done well is he's given his premier players that did start the previous game before a Champions League game, he's given them sort of 20 minutes, half an hour rest at the end of games. So not only has he rotated well, got results, but he's also been able to give players like Moutinho came off with 20 minutes to go before the previous game in the Champions League in Ligue 1. Bernardo Silva only got 64 minutes in the previous game. So he's something that he's proved that he's very good at. So I imagine he'll continue to rotate and give his players rest where he can and continue to get results. So it's been quite impressive so far. And I imagine that it will stand them in good stead for the midweek game in Moscow.
Yeah, it does appear too as a bonus that Adama Traore is in the 18 for tomorrow. Not there had been some doubts about his availability. Coming on to you,
absolutely. Yeah.
Coming on to you, Peter. Toulouse have been more heavily affected than Monaco by international travel, like Steve Iago and Isiaga Silla, in particular. Both haven't played in Africa, and haven't really rotated much this season. Will the energy of Monaco catch up to them, or will the youngish squad not be feeling any ill effects from this sort of travel?
Quite possibly. It's one of those things, really, isn't it? I think, obviously, Monaco are on a bit of a high at the moment. Such a fantastic performance against the Mets last week with a 7-0. So I think that alone is going to make things difficult because, there's going to be so much positivity in the Monaco camp. But, yeah, I think it will help Toulouse that they have young players. Though just because they're young doesn't necessarily mean that they're, that they're going to avoid tiredness. If anything, they could potentially be even more with all the travelling as well that goes into the international football. So I think it's going to be another great game. I would fancy Monaco to win that one, but I hope to lose, and I won't be too affected by that.
All right, so let's get some predictions then. Adam, we'll come on to you first.
I think this is going to be the hardest game for Monaco before a Champions League game so far. I think Toulouse at home, 2-1 Toulouse. I'm a big fan of Dupraz and the guys, so 2-1.
All right, Peter, for yourself?
I am going to say 2-0 to Monaco.
Nathan?
Yeah, really interesting game. I think some weaknesses in Toulouse was slightly exposed against Caen the other week. So I'm going to go 2-1 Monaco.
Okay. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw myself. All right. And then we're going to move on to the other match on Friday. That's Lyon's trip to Nice, which could see the return of Alexandre Lacazette, who has been also named in Lyon's traveling squad. Nathan, should Lyon risk him for this chance to move up the table or save him from the Juventus match coming off injury as he is?
Just to double check, the Juventus game, is it at Parc OL or is it at the Juventus Stadium? Just as a check, because if it's at Juve, I would say definitely play him.
It is at Lyon.
Right, excellent. That makes it even harder. Super. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because especially, I always say in the Champions League, win your home games, even if it is against someone like Juve. And the loss to Sevilla sort of especially highlights that they need to get a result, at least a positive one, even if that's a draw against Juve. So I save him for the Juve match, just because I think Well, it's against Nice, isn't it? That's it. I'm tossing and turning. It depends on how fit Bruno Genesio thinks he is. If he thinks he's fit, ready to go, and can play both games, start him. If not, he needs to decide which one's more of a priority. He needs the points in the league to start catching all those in front of him, because there's at this stage of the season, to mount a title challenge at least, there's too much of a gap. Then that needs to change. But if he thinks he has enough with the players he has to beat Nice, which is a tricky task this season, then you leave him out and start him in the Juve game. It's a much easier decision if it's away in Italy, because you probably risk losing that game in the sense of winning possibly at home against them next time out, and then winning the game against Sevilla later on in the group. But it's a real fine balancing that, isn't it? So it's a heavy decision for Genesio. I don't want to be in his shoes. I probably, if he's ready, I'd play him in this game, because a win against Nice is knocking something off your rivals at the moment anyway. So I would probably risk him but it depends on if he's 85%. If he's less than 95%, don't play him until that Juve game. Save him, because there's no point. Because you risk him getting injured again, and then it being another process of getting recovered again. So you want him to at least stand a chance of playing one of the games for the entire 90 minutes. So yeah, it's going to be fun for him at least. I don't want to be in his shoes.
Nice, on the other hand, have few injury woes. No new injuries. Dalbert is it perhaps a doubt, but whether he would start anyway is a matter of some debate. Adam, does an emphatic win here really cement them as genuine title contenders, or do you need to see more from them?
I think it would certainly go a long way to keeping them as in people's thoughts for the title, but I think in the long run you're going to need to see a lot more from them. I mean, if they were to win this game, it would definitely be a massive step in the right direction, but there is the caveat to that Lyon are facing the big Champions League game during the week, so they're not necessarily going to be entirely focused on this game with the issues surrounding Lacazette's fitness and things. So a win would be good, but it wouldn't necessarily be as crucial as it would be in a few months' time to sort of really cement their title challenges. There's still a few questions over Nice, even though they've done brilliantly. They've been fantastic so far this season. To be top up to the second international break in October is a brilliant start, really. But whether they can maintain this form, as we've seen across Europe, across football in general, you often get teams that start brilliantly well and sort of are that sort of surprise package. It's not necessarily the case of Nice, because they were so good last season too. But given the overhaul in their squad, there's still questions over perhaps Balotelli, whether he can maintain his form, which has been great, and his goal to win the game with Lyon was fantastic. If he can maintain that for the course of the season, which he would have to, I guess, to can keep them, was one of the key factors in keeping them in the title challenge. Whether a 3-5-2 is going to work long term in Ligue, and it's not necessarily a formation that's prolific in the league. Whether that will be Lucien Favre's weapon of choice, if you like, for the remainder of the year, and whether that will work in the long run. The squad isn't the biggest in midfield. They've got options, but in defence and in forward areas, if they were to get some injuries and suspensions, there's probably some issues whether other players can come in and perform as well to such a high standard. And players like Sarr, who's only 17, whether his form can continue for the season. So there's questions there, but I think the real ace, as Nathan mentioned at the start of the year, is Lucien Favre. He's as Nathan mentioned, I think on our preview pod for the season, he's probably the signing of the year. Getting him was a massive coup for Nice. So I think if they're going to sustain it, his experience from taking over at Gladbach, and I remember when he took over Gladbach, they were terrible near the bottom of the league. He kept them up and took them to one of the top four sides in the Bundesliga. He's a brilliant manager, and if he can keep them in a title challenge, even at sort of late spring sort of time, would be amazing. So I think if Lucien Favre can maintain this tune he's getting from his side, then his experience and the way he goes about his business as a really interesting, really tactically aware, really thoughtful manager is their ace in the pack, I think. So still questions, but if those questions are going to be answered, Favre is the man you want at the helm. So a big win tomorrow would be great, but they've still got a long way to go.
All right, let's get our predictions then. Peter?
This is a tricky one for me. I'm going to go for a Nice win, 1-0.
Nathan?
2-2 draw.
2-2 goals. All right, I'm going to go for a 2-1 Nice win. Adam?
I'm going to go. I think Nice might sneak it, but I was going to go 1-0 and then I wanted to go 2-1. So I go 3-2 Nice by the odd goal.
All right. So, Peter, we'll stay with you then. Let's move on to the multiplex. Lille welcomes struggling Guingamp to the Stade Pierre-Mauroy. After a fine start to the season, what's gone wrong as of late for Antoine Comboire's team?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think for me, it's a question of quality, especially in the kind of attacking areas. Main threat really is Jimmy Briand, who's been such an excellent player over the years, but I think age is catching up with him a little bit, and he hasn't quite looked convincing in front of goal this season. And I also think a problem for Guingamp has been their formation. Playing a 4-4-2 requires a lot of energy, especially in the middle of the park, and I think teams have caught up with them, and they've run out of steam a bit recently. Maybe the international break, though, would have been something that's done them a lot of good. I'm not sure how many players from theirs actually were used over the international period. It'd be interesting if anybody's got the answer to that one. But perhaps that break might have done them good and helped them to refresh and stand a good chance, especially against this Lille team who have obviously been so poor so far this season.
Nathan, what about Lille? Were there positives for you in the win over Nancy, or will this team continue to struggle over the course of the season?
The solo positive from that win against Nancy was that they won against Nancy, because they probably shouldn't. And there was a goal for Nancy disallowed for offside in bemusing circumstances. It certainly wasn't offside. I don't know where the linesman's pulled that one from. It's one of the poorest decisions I've seen in a long while. And Nancy were battering at the door even before then, and Lille sneak a goal and they win 1-0. So they really, really looked out. Whether that's put the confidence back into them, I don't know. They're probably lucky again to play a Guingamp side that didn't look great against Rennes. The problem they had was without Sloan Privat to be... It was strange. Comboire, without Sloan Privat, decided to play Jimmy Briand and Marcus Coco as strikers, and it didn't really work. They couldn't keep the ball often enough further upfield. They struggled for width as well because of it, and they probably should have earned a point just simply because they were so solid in the middle with Mustafa Diallo and Luka Do. But this is going to be either a really crazy game where finally two teams go for it, or at least Comboire's Guingamp do something, or it's going to be an absolute barn burner in the wrong way where people flee for their lives hoping that they never have to watch the game like that again. But yeah, the positive for Lille the other week was the win. There's nothing much else to write about. Antonetti should be still really in the hot seat. He still needs another result for me because they're still not playing well enough. Something needs to happen in this one.
All right, Nathan, what's your prediction then?
I'm going to go 1-0 Guingamp.
All right. Myself, I'm going to go with scoreless draw. Adam?
Oh, that's what I was going for.
Adam, for yourself, your prediction?
1-1.
All right. And Peter?
I'll go 2-2.
All right. Let's finish the program then with a look at Marseille hosting Metz. Perhaps not the most appetizing for Ligue 1's television programmers, as the Sunday night match is usually a little more appetizing than this. But Adam, what can you tell us about Metz? Did Hinchberger get his changes wrong after the red card 2 weeks ago in the 7-0 loss to Monaco? Or had this been coming in a more general sense for a promoted team?
A little bit of both, I think. I thought young Greta Hine, who's come in and played well, who was sort of sacrificed after that Decore setting off for Diallo to come on, was in hindsight probably not the best idea. He was the only person that was really offering anything, but given they were 3-0 down and down to 10 men, I think at that moment that against a far superior opposition, it had to be damage limitation. So I think that would be the way that Hinchberger would have had to have gone. So I can see why Hine was sacrificed. I think overall they've done all right. They've started well, but when you look at the teams that they've played, perhaps where they've got their points have been against the weak opposition. So maybe, I don't know if it's been coming, but I think that they are quite in sort of, especially in forward sort of wide areas, and perhaps even in midfield, they're not the most solid of teams. I don't know if the fullbacks get that much protection. I don't know how much Manjaka and Decore really protect the back four. So perhaps they are open to conceding goals. I think at home, there were 3 at home to Bordeaux, and they could have conceded more in that game. So it's not necessarily the first time this has happened. So I think they'll still be, although it's a pretty dismal loss to Monaco 7-0. It doesn't happen in France very often, a scoreline like that, or really anywhere, to be honest. But in France especially, those scorelines are unusual. So it'd be a huge confidence blow to them. But I think overall they'll be happy with their position. And even though they're perhaps not the most secure at the back, they are going to score goals. So even though they've got those points against the weaker opposition, that'll be fine. I think coming to the end of the season, they would have taken 17th on August the 1st, at the beginning of August, at the end of the year. So, yes, Hinsberger possibly could have gone slightly different with his changes, but I think it was fair enough. Damage limitation was the only way to go in that situation. But overall, their season looks fine. I was very disappointed with Bisevac in that 7-0 loss. There was one goal that Carrillo scored where he just gave up, and I think perhaps Milan and Follett at the moment are the probably should be the first choice centre of that partnership. And I've said how much I like Renacard on the pod before, but I haven't been particularly impressed with him overall this season. And he got a bit he lost his cool a little bit against Monaco, gave away that penalty, tore around, possibly could have got himself sent off as well. And he hasn't been the leader I hoped he would be for them. And so there are holes in this team. And over the course of the season, that may wear them down. And I still think they're going to be in the bottom 5 come the end of the year. But given the start overall, Hinsberger will still be pleased, hope for a better result against Marseille this weekend. So a long way to go for them, but they look okay.
Peter, how about Marseille? They've been frustrated to draw out the death against Angers, but they looked at an improved side on the whole, wouldn't you say?
I think so, yeah. I think it's important not to take too much away from Angers. I thought they deserved their point, and they've been playing better than I think many think this season. So I do think they deserve their point. I think Marseille are certainly a bit more entertaining to watch at the moment. I love what Gomis is offering to that team, and Florian Thauvin is probably one of the most on-fire players in Ligue 1 at the moment. So there's certainly a lot of things to like about this Marseille side. I think, for me, the off-field stuff that's going on, obviously, at the moment with the new ownership group and the kind of transition over from the old owners is always, despite how the club want to spin it, it's always going to be a distraction. So it's difficult times for Marseille, just as it's difficult times for Marseille fans to watch their club like this. But I think they are on the up. There's plenty of good players in there. Like I said, Thauvin, Sarr, Cabella has impressed me. I've been really impressed by Johan Pele as well in goal. I think it was a big step up for him to come in and fill Mandanda's boots. But I have been impressed by him so far this season. So there's certainly things to smile about for Marseille. And if they can pull off a win here, I think they'll be happy.
All right, let's get our predictions then. I will start. I'll go with a 2-0 win for Marseille. Adam?
1-0 Marseille.
Peter?
I'm going to say 2-1 to Marseille.
And Nathan?
I'm going to go with a goalless draw. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Thomas Didion reacts to having 7 put past him the other week and see if he can recover, because as a young goalkeeper, that can be a tough thing to take. So how he reacts in this game will be really interesting to watch.
He's either going to be unbeatable or it's going to be floodgates again, isn't it?
Yes, so that's why it's going to be really, really interesting. That's going to be the main storyline for me. If he can recover from that, it will show how good mentality-wise he is and how far he might be able to go in this game.
All right, so that's all for this week. Make sure to tune in to the GFFN show on Monday to recap all these matches, and to follow us at GFFN on Twitter, and to visit us at www.getfootballnewsfrance.com for all your latest headlines and updates from around the world of French football. Thank you, and have a pleasant weekend.